Okay, good evening everyone, and welcome to our remote learning live stream for parents and carers. My name is Mr McNally. I'm the assistant head teacher for teaching and learning. First of all, thank you for joining us this evening. The aim of it is to provide you, the parents and carers, with more clarity about what we're offering at Dean Trust Wigan, and also to give you more confidence so that you can support your son and daughter in the best way possible. It's a real focus of our school to strengthen that teacher-parent relationship moving forward, in order to ensure that we deliver the best education for your child. I'm joined tonight by my colleagues, Mr Nolan, the head of science, and Mr Henry, the head of year 11 and also teacher of computing. And between the three of us, we will hopefully give you the confidence to access Google Classroom moving forward. So hopefully you will be able to see my screen. I'll just present it now. Right. So to give you an outline for the session this evening, the first thing I'm going to talk about is the journey so far, where we were and basically where we are currently. And then I'm going to lead into the protocols for remote learning. And then I'm going to pass to Mr. Nolan, who's going to talk you through a little bit about Google Classroom and what its features are. Mr. Henry's then going to take over and he's going to talk about assessment and capture. And then we're going to show some questions that we've had from parents and carers. And then finally, we would be really grateful if you would complete our feedback form, which I know a few of you have done already. It's just really, really useful for us moving forward to be able to make the best provision possible. So the journey so far. So when going back to the first lockdown, it allowed us to learn a lot about remote learning. Needless to say, we did feel like we were novices at it, and it was obviously difficult for everyone. But from the word go, the first provision that we included was the setup on Google Classroom. And the way that we originally did it was we had a year group focus, and at the time, the provisions that we put in place met a need for everyone. It was instantly there, and pupils could access it, and work was uploaded. There were limitations moving forward to that system that we had in place, and the biggest problem that we encountered was that the way that we'd set it up in year groups, it only allowed 20 teachers to access each year group. So what it meant was that a lot of the uploading was put onto the heads of faculty and heads of department, which wasn't a problem other for the fact that we felt like moving forward we needed to personalize this provision to make sure that the pupils at our school were getting the best education. So listening to staff, listening to pupils and parents, it allowed us to reshape the outlook that we had. So we had two main focuses that we wanted to put into place. The first one was to improve the structure and the organisation of the provision. So since September, my job role as I said, being assistant head teacher for teaching and learning. And what I really wanted to do was make sure that this was nice and clear, so that when pupils and teachers in the first instance were accessing this provision, everyone knew where they stood with it. The secondary part of that was focusing on the quality of what we're delivering and also the tracking of it. And I'll explain shortly how we've done that. So how have we instructed? I mentioned that we had a year group provision from year 7 to 11. But what we've done now is, as you can see from this picture, we've split it into faculty areas. So obviously we've got Key Stage 3 English, Key Stage 4 English, Key Stage 3 Maths, Key Stage 4 Maths, and so on. So every single faculty now has their own area. What does each faculty area now contain? It contains the individual class codes for the teachers. It also includes a bank of home learning resources. So what would you find in there? You'd find knowledge organisers, you'd find lessons that have been taught in the previous term. But what's also really important, and it's not just myself, but obviously the other work with the assistant head teachers is about tying everything together and making sure that we've got material in there for instance, if a pupil is placed into in-text, if a pupil is spending some time in the step-out provision, or if there is a fixed term exclusion, there's also work in there. So what's really, really important about that is that no matter where the pupil is at the stage in their learning, or in terms of where they are, either in the classroom or they're out of the classroom, it means that they never miss out. So the way that we restructured this is to actually provide more clarity. So that's the faculty area outlook. And in a bit, Mr. Nolan's going to talk about what sits inside the faculty areas. So what are our provisions for remote learning? The first thing that I'd like to say is that the pupils follow their normal timetable, and it does include form time each morning. I did have some feedback from parents asking if form does take place, and it does, and every single Friday assembly also takes place. We are a live lesson school. Not every school is, but we wanted to make sure that our provisions cause the minimal disruption to pupils' education as possible. On the rare occasion that it isn't possible, it would be in the event that, for instance, a teacher might be absent themselves, or a teacher is actually in school looking after a pupil who needs to come into school. So what would happen in that case is the work would be uploaded, but there'll also be clear instructions on how pupils access that provision for that day. You can find more details about the lockdown curriculum focus on the school website. If I click on that link there, what it'll do, it'll take you to the website, and you will see there at the top, it says remote learning. This here is a document that's been put together that the DFE asked us to do. And what it does is explains all the provisions that we've put into place, what departments are doing in terms of offering what specifically in terms of their curriculum. We've tried to keep the curriculum as structured as possible so that there isn't that disruption. But in the rare occasion where there might have to be a slight amendment, there's more information in there about how that takes place. Here is all the information that came out from Mr. Hazelden in terms of the structure around it all, and also there's a bit more information from myself in there. So just going back to the PowerPoint, I'd just like to introduce you to this. So this is something that is really big for us moving forward, and what it entails is our core teaching and learning principles. So our staff have been trained in the latest educational theories, which look at a lot of theories behind someone called Barak Rosenshine. And it's the idea of that every single lesson should contain a review phase where we link to prior content. And it's really, really important that that occurs, because we know that when pupils move out of the classroom, the research shows that they forget up to 70% of the stuff that they learned that day, which is normal. We've all been there. We're in a lesson, we're engaged, we think of stuff. And if you think about, what you had for your tea yesterday, sometimes it's very, very difficult to remember. And over time, if you do not revisit that key knowledge, then it's pointless in actually moving forward. So that's a real key feature every single lesson for us. The next three is a reasoning phase, and what we do there is skill development. Questioning is really important. So you might have noticed in the live lessons that this is the model that teachers will be taking. And then what's really important moving forward is that we introduce something called the red zone. Now, this is something that moving forward is really important for us, because what we really want to develop in our school is independence for pupils. So what that would entail is pupils doing a task and then being assessed against that, and then obviously celebrating that success. And what we really want to do in our school is develop a culture of it's okay to get things wrong. At the end of the day,
Hi everyone, I'll take over for a second on this one, and I think that just highlights at the moment one of the problems that we are going to have at the moment whilst we are going forward with remote learning. We will have technical issues, we will have times where something will go wrong, and we need to then just take it, stop for a minute, calm, and not worry about it. If something does go wrong, we all understand that technology sometimes is not our friend. So this is where Mr McNally was just talking through, and it is the whole culture that students will get stuff wrong. We have got stuff wrong throughout this, and we need to be able to actually develop this and this culture of not being scared to actually put ourselves out there, not being scared to carry on and work through something. If there is an issue, if there is a bit of hard work, we try, and then it's even more worth it when we actually do discover that, yeah, we've done that. I think we might have got Mr McNally back there. Mr McNally, do you want to take back over, sir?
Yeah, sir, if I can just ask where we actually got up to before it booted me out.
We've just gone through, I've just explained about the fact of the red zone and that we need to actually be able to grapple with that task. And also I've just explained about the fact that we will have remote learning problems at the moment, as highlighted by your computer there, sir.
Yeah, that was deliberate, sir. That was just to show everyone exactly the problems that we face. But I'll present from this point on.
I'll let you carry on, sir.
Cheers, sir. Thank you. So yeah, apologies about that, everyone. But if I just go back to the next thing that I wanted to talk about was basically the more serious part of my conversation tonight, which is about the protocols and also the timings for remote learning. I'll actually start with the timings. We did amend them slightly to fit in so that our pupils were getting 5 hours a day with a 10-minute break and obviously a half an hour lunch. You'll notice that on Fridays, the assembly time takes place, as I mentioned before, and that will take place 20 minutes. In terms of protocols, what do we expect from our staff at Dean Trust Wigan? Well, first of all, that they're in an appropriate environment to deliver the online provision and that they're professionally dressed. However, we have introduced something that all pupils and teachers are to turn the cameras off. And also, I'll talk a little bit more about the pupil provisions in a minute. But obviously, what that does is it just provides an extra layer of safeguarding for both pupils and staff. We've also asked staff to make sure that registers completed at the beginning of every lesson. And if that can't be done, that it is done by 2:30. To encourage pupils to obviously turn off their microphones and cameras, which, to be fair, the pupils are being really good at doing so far. The next thing for us as well is to ensure that work reflects the length of the lesson. So the lesson now is 40 minutes, but to make sure that they are utilising that 40 minutes to the best of their ability. Obviously, we want to be wary as well around any pupils are causing a disturbance, and what we'd encourage staff to do is to mute those pupils who are causing a disturbance. The behaviour policy that we would insist on in school applies as well to home learning. And obviously using the share function to present lesson materials, ask questions, as I was talking about in the reasoning phase of the lesson, use the chat function, put it in there. We are aware as well that pupils, do feel quite shy in terms of shouting out the answers, especially if there's a lot of pupils in the classroom. And, that's a difficult thing for them. And hopefully over time, they get a little bit more confident. We're also encouraging staff to remove pupils who purposely disrupt the live lesson. And then that obviously follows a protocol moving forward, which we can talk about in a bit. And also make sure that all pupils have left the lesson at the end before the staff member leaves. What are we expecting from our pupils? Well, the first thing I'd say is we expect the highest standards. And the first thing we want them to do is feel comfortable and try their best. I said before about we don't want to detract from what we'd expect in the classroom and the high standards that we do have. And we want to make sure that our educational provisions are the best. So we want them to access daily. As I said, turn off the microphones and cameras when in a live lesson, and use the chat function to ask questions. We really do want pupils to not be afraid of asking questions. And, you know, it's obviously talking about that independence that I was referring to before, and it's about developing resilience and that culture of it's okay, and that no one's looking at you in a bad light if you get it wrong. So what? Doesn't matter, because we're here as educational professionals to help. And if we don't get that feedback off pupils, there's no way that we'll ever know how to push them on. So it's to develop that culture coming from the teachers, but also the pupils knowing that it's okay to get things wrong. Obviously, we'd appreciate if they don't share Google Meet codes with anyone else. And obviously, if invited to join the lesson, they must be suitably dressed. I've obviously said that, you know, the cameras are to be turned off, but in the case of where they accidentally come on, they're still suitably dressed. And also to try the hardest. We're not looking for perfection, we're looking for effort. And it's our job to try and reshape the learning so that we do strive for perfection. So that's just a little bit about the protocols. So hopefully as parents, you know exactly where we stand with that. And the next slide that I wanted to show you is slide 7, which is tracking and monitoring. So what is our process behind making sure that pupils are attending lessons? So you'll see here, there's just a little snapshot, and you'll notice that if it's green, it means that the pupil's present. Now, what we do is we rank pupil participation, effort, performance on the same numbering system that we would do in school. So 1 is we're looking at the pupils made an outstanding contribution to a lesson. 2, a good contribution. 3 is what, you know, we'd expect. And 4 is a contribution where realistically they're there, but they haven't participated. They haven't done any of the expected work that we would like them to do. And what you can see in this column here, this column will add up the number of sessions attended, so it does include form time as well. And what there is here is then a tiered approach to how we respond to that. So if the pupil has accessed 7 lessons in the day, then there is no further action to be taken. You can see with this particular pupil, accessed all the way throughout the day, got to lunchtime, and then in the afternoon didn't participate. So what that would be down to then is the class teacher to contact home and say, is there any reason why your son or daughter didn't participate? Obviously, if we've only got 1 participation for the day, then that is a cause for concern, and that would fall to the head of year to make the phone call home. As you can see from this snapshot, we've had a really good turnout in terms of pupils access, and which is what we want. You know, we want to see all 7s, but you know, we do understand as well that it's not always possible. But what I would like to say before I hand over to Mr. Nolan is that the level of support and provisions that we can put into place is there for you and for your child. So if you do have any issues at all, please do not hesitate to contact us, because at the forefront of our mind is making sure that everything is as normal as possible. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to lead over to Mr. Nolan, who's going to take you through more of the technical side about Google Classroom and hopefully give you a little bit more confidence in how it works. So I'll be quiet now. I will get away from my PowerPoint, and Mr. Nolan, I will pass all the parents over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. McNally.
I'll just, yeah, you're going to share. Brilliant.
Okay, so like Mr. McNally's just said there, I'll take us through what it's looking like in terms of when a student will log into Google Classroom. So the way I currently have it is, so once a student's logged in through their usual way of logging in that they would at school, they would come up to the Google Classroom. Now, we've had different ways, like Sir said, we've evolved in our methods. And originally we obviously had the year groups, and now we've gone to the actual key stage groups. From the actual school website, where we had the remote learning section, this is our safe bet with everything. If you are struggling on something, if there is a area, so say you are missing from maths and your student or your child can't get onto the maths classrooms, if you go through this information here and scroll down, it will take you through to a section where you have all the key stage codes. So say it was a student that is in year 8 and they were missing the maths. All they need to do is copy that code. I'll just copy that one. Up in the top right hand corner, there's a section where it says join class. And all they would need to do is to put that code in, join, and it will then assign them into that classroom. Now, we have taken away a layer of this, but if for some reason your student or your child ends up not being within that actual classroom again at some point, they will always be able to come back to here, find their class teacher, and they will be able to join the classroom there. So straight away, say this was a student who needed to get into this classroom, click onto the link, join class, and then after a couple of seconds, it will join. So now, if this is a student who was in Miss Hyman's maths group, should be able to join into there and should be able to access any of the work that Miss Hyman's has set. What the teachers have now done though, is we have taken that away a little bit by we have now gone through and invited the students from our classes. So for instance here, Miss Backhouse has gone through and she's invited the students, and it will show up slightly differently this time. But all that they have to do is they've got the option to join or decline. Now bear in mind, it's obviously a teacher has invited them. There's a reason for that. So all they'll have to do is click on join. And again, after a couple of seconds, it will bring you up into the classroom. And now, this is just an example classroom, but this is how it is set out. So there is, up at the top section, there is 3. There is only 2 that really matter to your child though. And you have the stream, which is where the teacher could post a couple of messages. They could post an announcement to remind them about something. They could post to just explain, there's not going to be a live lesson today because I'm in school looking after students, like Mr McNally said, need that looking after. It also here has upcoming work. So the teacher's gone through set work and they can put due dates on it. So you can straight away realize that this student has got work that is needed to be completed by Monday, and then some that is due to be completed by Wednesday. To find all that work, all you need to go to is the classwork up at the top. Now these are all set out so there is parity between every single department going forward. We realised that there was a few mistakes. We had done it in a different way to start off with, and we've listened to parents when they've been contacting us to say we can't find the live lesson code. So what we've done is we have changed it. We have now changed, so at this top of every single classwork section there'll be a section here where it says live lesson for all classes, and within there there'll be a Google Meet code. Once they click onto that, this is an instance one. Obviously there is no lesson going on at the moment, but that would take you to the lesson. Now we have had moments where it comes up and it'll say that they can't join it for some reason. Like I said beforehand, there is technology problems. So it is a case then of we have the ability to, on this, you can always go onto it and just leave a comment. So the student will be able to leave a comment saying, I'm trying to get in, there's an issue, it's not allowing us. and the teachers will be on their emails at the same time, and they will be able to respond and say, okay, work through this, and I'll contact you later if need be. And we have always got that constant communication, and it allows us to narrow that gap between remote learning and it becoming an issue. The main thing that we obviously don't want. And Mr. Henry is going to go into in a little bit about more into the case of how do students actually upload the work? What will it look like? What do they actually need to do? However, what you can see here is there is different colours on these codes here. Anything that is blue shows up as something where your child needs to actually do some work. So if it comes up as a little notepad like this, it's classed as an assignment. If it is a little question mark, it is just a question the teacher has set. Now, it can be slightly different ways. So we can have Google Docs, everything is through there, so every student can access the work. If we didn't use Google Docs, then obviously we'd need to have anything along the lines of Microsoft, and it wouldn't work for everyone. We will use other types of assessment as well. We'll use Google quizzes, which are quick ones for us. And it just allows us to occasionally get a few snapshots, but I'm not going to tread on Mr. Henry's toes there. As soon as your child has actually submitted work though, these will change to grey, the same as what these codes are here. These are just materials. So this live lesson code won't change. At the bottom here, and this is the way again that most of the classrooms will end up being set out, there will be some form of revision materials. So normally, obviously, we will give the students knowledge organisers in school, which they'll be able to use to help them. We've put as well, a lot of the classrooms will now have the revision materials there. So they will have knowledge organisers. So I put, for instance, on this one, you've got paper 1, paper 2, and they can open them up from there. And it just allows us to have that bit of normality. It allows us to still be teaching without it being completely different, whilst at the same time we know it is different, we know it is tough, and we all share that same kind of idea with you that it's not been an easy few weeks and months. The main thing that we need to make sure that you all know is that every lesson, the first thing is for your child to go into the live lesson code and join that meet. Then you'll notice within this section here where it says lessons, they will be dated. So for instance, if it was today, the 4th of Feb, it will say the 4th of February and this lesson was there for 1:10, and there's the resources that I'm going to need. And then the teacher will obviously go through everything else that is needed to go through in that lesson. That is as straightforward as I think at the moment we can make it. However, we are still obviously learning with this. We do want it, like Mr McNally said, we'd love it if you were able to actually complete a bit of the feedback later and tell us, is there any little changes that we could make? What else could we do that makes it streamlined and easier for your child to access remote learning? Because like we said, we want them there, we need them there. And if we follow that and we work together, that parent and that teacher relationship, then we'll be able to carry on pushing your student or the children forward. For me, that is everything that I need to go through, because it is just a case of following them little routes. Right. So again, we have got the fact of using the remote learning area on the website. Any of the codes there, like Mr McNally said, we do have forms still. So again, you can get the codes from there. Any issues, then please feel free to email. I've spent quite a lot of time ringing parents about any issues, as has Mr McNally, as will Mr Henry and other teachers. We will try and support you in every single way that we can. So on that one, I'm going to pass over to Mr Henry to go through about assessment and capture. And thank you very much for attending tonight as well, and thank you for listening.
Thanks very much, Mr Nolan. Okay, good evening everyone. As Mr Nolan just said, I'm going to go through assessment and capture. And as teachers, assessment and capture is what we do every day, and it's really important to us to help your child in their learning, but to help us in our planning to help your child in their learning. So it all comes back to your child's learning and our precision planning. As Mr McNally said, at the start of every lesson there will be a review activity, and that review activity allows us to assess what your child has remembered, and that could take a variety of forms. It could be a comment in the chat box, it could be a short task on Google Classroom, it could be a quiz, but ultimately that task will be set to see and assess what your child has remembered. Once the review task is over, we go into the teaching phase of the lesson. And then once the teaching phase has finished, okay, we will have done some questioning throughout that teaching phase, but once that's finished and your child is on with their learning task, there are a number of ways in which we are mirroring the classroom to online learning. So I'm just going to present my screen to show you two features of the chat and the raised hand, two features of the meeting. I want to show you that as a visual as well as telling you about it, so you can see that when you come to your child's computer or electronic device when they're on a lesson. You can see here there's a chat feature, and that's a two-way chat, okay? As I always say to my pupils, teaching and learning in a school is a team effort. I cannot teach if a child isn't giving me feedback and willing to learn, and they can't learn if I can't teach them effectively. So it is a two-way communication. So that allows the teacher to ask questions, but it also allows pupils to give a response. There's also a raise hand feature, okay? And the raise hand feature is also a two-way communication as well, because it allows the teacher to ask pupils to maybe raise their hands in response to a question that might be true or false or yes or no. But it also allows the pupil to put the hand up just like they would do in the classroom if they need some support, if they need some help, and we're mirroring the classroom to the online provision. In the classroom, as a child raises the hand or as we are walking around supporting children, we will look at children's work, we will read the work, we will give feedback, we will address misconceptions, and we're also able to do that on Google Classroom. What we've got is when we set an assignment, it automatically appears in our personal drive, okay, our document area. And if a pupil is struggling or wants us to look over some work, or we're just going in, assessing everybody and seeing where everyone's up to, we can do that live. It shows us when a pupil has last updated their work and allows us to enter that pupil's work, read what they've written, congratulate them, praise them, address any misconceptions, and support them in making progress. That is really, really effective because it very much mirrors the classroom. As I walk around my classroom, I will read children's work, I will address misconceptions. And if I look at a number of pupils' work, I'll use my Year 10 example from earlier this week. I looked at a number of pupils' work during my live lesson with Year 10 on Tuesday midday. And there were a number of pupils that had got the same thing wrong. Okay, so that was a misconception of more than one person. So I was able to stop the class from the learning activity, reteach what I needed to reteach, and move them on. So I'd been able to assess in exactly the same way as I would have done, if I'd have been in the classroom. So that is really important. In terms of when you are onto Google Classroom, or your child is onto Google Classroom and they enter their classroom, the teacher will ask them to go to the classwork task and they will find instructions, as Mr Nolan said, with a document or two, okay? They click view assignments and there will be a number of options here, okay? We appreciate that not everybody is using a laptop or a desktop computer. Some pupils might be using tablets such as iPads, or some tasks might involve pupils writing in their class books that they might have at home. So I'm just going to show you a number of ways in which your child could be asked to hand in their activity as we move on. If a teacher has set a task, okay, that is as an assignment, it will appear here. You'll see this is an example login, so it says DTW19 user. Let's use Joe Blogs as an example. This would say Joe Blogs and then the name of the document. If that is the case, they can click on that document. Okay, it will open in Google Docs, and they can complete this document. Okay, you'll notice that as they type into this document, it says here last edited 4 hours ago, it automatically updates and saves. So for example, if your child's device lost power, it would automatically be saved. It takes one task away from the pupils. They don't have to worry about handing that in. There's two things they can do. At the end of the lesson, they can either click turn in here, or if we go back to the classroom, if they've come back to here and they haven't clicked turn in, they can just click hand in. Okay, it might be that they've done it in the book and they need to take a photograph of it using maybe their mobile device, a tablet or what have you, and they can do that by clicking add or create and going finding that file and uploading it as an image. Okay, what I would encourage them not to do is, and it saves confusion, is if the teacher has set them a task and the document is already waiting for them, some pupils accidentally go and create a new document and it just causes confusion later. So if there is a task there ready and waiting for them, they should use that and then click hand in. If they've done it in the book, they can add a file, which could be a photograph of their work. If it's a practical task, maybe it's a DT task, maybe it's a food task, maybe it's a performance, okay? They may be asked to upload a video of them making that cake, maybe their hands showing the mixing of the ingredients and so on. That might be a video of the bowl showing the mixing and showing the skill. That again would be inserted a file, but that will be directed by the teacher and will be clear in the description. Just going to go back because there's one more way in which a pupil can hand in a piece of work if they're not sorry, I've just clicked on the wrong assignment. If they're not going to take an image, okay? If they don't have the device to take an image, or it isn't required, they can quite simply click mark as done. And Mr Nolan showed you earlier the to-do list, and Mr Nolan said that when they'd done their work and they'd handed it in, it would go from blue to grey, okay? If they have handed it in, or they've uploaded a file, or they've clicked mark as done, then it will turn grey. If they've clicked marked as done, when we do return to on-site teaching, they can bring that work back and show their teacher what they have produced as mark has done. Mr Nolan has kindly created a video to explain that for the pupils if they would like a recap, and that can be found on the remote learning page on our website under the remote learning and Google Classroom guidance. So just to reiterate, we have a number of ways in which we're mirroring the classroom. We will be doing question and answer through the chat feature. We have the hand up feature should we need some feedback, which is, for example, yes or no, or true or false. And the hand up feature can also be used to alert the teacher that you might need some support. We can access your child's work during a lesson to assess where they're at and take them further and help them progress in the learning whilst live in the lesson. And then there are 3 ways in which they might be asked to hand in, either to hand in that document that has been created for them, mark as done if it has been done and we're not uploading a file, or if there is a file to upload, we choose add or create and then select the file that we want to upload. That is assessment in a live lesson in a nutshell. If you've got any questions on that, please feel free to add them to the feedback form and we'll be happy to help you further. But for now, I'm going to pass you over to Mr McNally, who's going to go to some questions and round up our session this evening. Thanks, Mr McNally.
Thank you, sir, and thanks to both of you for your input on that. I just want to close the session just by going through a couple of questions that we've had from parents, and hopefully those questions have been answered now. But what's really, really important is the last part of this, because as Mr. Nolan said before, it's about us learning as well and listening to what parents and pupils think of our provisions. And we think that what we've put into place so far is a really good system moving forward. And the way that we're going to utilize it going forward is it's going to take a big focus for our homework provisions moving forward. Couple of questions, if I can just share this screen. It says, the first question that we got through was, my son can't access their individual classroom. How do we add them to the classroom? So hopefully Mr. Nolan's explained that in terms of going to the faculty codes and adding that and then finding the individual classroom. But in the first instance, what staff have been asked to do is invite pupils to their individual classrooms. So it takes away any of the sort of potential problems that we initially had in the first lockdown. So that's the first one, hopefully answered. The second one is, what do I do if my technology is failing? Well, the first thing I'd say is don't panic. Don't worry about it. As Mr. Nolan says, just comment into the chat. There'll always be some form of provision where the pupil can still work through the worksheet, the PowerPoint. And if they still are struggling on that, then just let the teacher know. Just put it into the comment section, and the teacher will then follow it up. And failing that, if the technology, if you've got an issue with a laptop or need some advice on internet provisions, then please contact the school, because as I said before, we're there to support. Third one, I can't find the live lesson link. Where do I go to? So when you go to your particular classroom, individual classroom, if you go to the little tabs at the top and there is one which says classroom, the live link will be there in bold. Click on that and then you will be able to join. Hopefully Mr. Henry has answered the query that we received about how does a child submit a photo of their work, which obviously you go to the link section and upload the file. And last but not least, what does my child have to do to get a mark on the register? So we want to be very, very clear about this, that where there is a live lesson provision, which realistically is most of the time, what we would expect pupils is to engage in our live learning provision. As I said before, not every school does do it, but we want to ensure that we don't have any disruption, or as little disruption to as normal school life as possible. So them actually being in that live lesson, engaging with the teacher, is what we believe moving forward is the best provision for our pupils at the moment. In terms of getting the mark, what they need to do is they need to make sure that obviously they're participating, and if they are doing so, then that should secure them a mark 3 on the register. And obviously if they are given some input, that obviously can take them to the 2 and the 1. And we really do want to measure the quality of students' impact moving forward as well, because it's important to quality assure what we're doing. Just one thing that I failed to mention before is, I think this is really, really important that you as parents know that we're doing this as well, is that no matter what our provision is, whether it's at home or whether it's in the building, we are still very rigorous in terms of quality assurance. So obviously, as my role as being in charge of teaching and learning. It's making sure that the protocols that we would expect in a classroom is still being delivered in a live lesson. Our school improvement focus is still our priority. And this quality assurance is being driven by our middle leaders and myself. So what middle leaders are doing is they are feeding back weekly and providing actions in terms of moving their own faculty areas forward, but also overall moving our school forward. And our aim is to deliver the best learning provisions in Wigan. You know, whether we're in the building or we are at home, we want to be the best, and we are striving to be that. So I've just outlined there some of the protocols that we would expect, and it ties into our teaching and learning principles that I mentioned before. So it was just when I was cut off before, I just wanted to make sure that you were aware that that is still taking place and we haven't forgotten about it. So just in summary, hopefully those questions have been answered. We would really appreciate this last section, which is there is a feedback form that is sitting on the website, and we'll keep that open over the next couple of weeks. And it won't take very long to complete, a couple of minutes, but what it'll allow us to do is it'll allow us to effectively get your feedback and see if you're happy with what we're delivering. And if you're not, obviously, we're going to make great strides to make sure that that what you are requesting is being met. And also, can we amend it in any way to make sure that the provision is better for your son or daughter? So we'd really like to thank you for participating this evening. I'd also like to thank my two colleagues for helping out, and it is our aim as well to move forward, have a look at your feedback, and deliver in the next session directly a response to what you think. So once again, thank you, take care, and stay safe, and we will speak to you soon. Thank you very much.